It's time for another podcast by George. Straight talk, straight from the heartland, that'll have you saying, "By George, I think he's got it." Now, here's George.
Hello, hi, how are you? Welcome on in to another podcast by George. We're going around the world again today to visit what a guy that's become an old buddy, an old pal. I mean, somebody that's riding it out there in Kyiv, Ukraine. And it is our friend, Sergey Tignerano. And I was struggling with that name. I've called him Serge, I've called him Sergey, but Sergey is probably the best pronunciation for that. And for folks that may not know it, that haven't caught him on the show before, or if they're not seeing him on the internet, and I encourage you to do that because this guy is everywhere doing what he can do. And he's doing a lot. We're going to get into that. But he is a musician, a singer, a songwriter from Kyiv, Ukraine. He's toured the United States. He's been all over the world. He is on the internet with some great music and some great fundraising activities. And we're going to get to all of that. But let's take this off of the screen here and make another click here and see if we can, there he is, and get him on in here. He's in his studio, good enough to come on the live line with us again today. Hi, Serge.
Hello, George. Nice to meet you once again.
Yeah, always good to see you, pal. And you've got a lot of fans. I mean, you've really created a following, and it's all for a good cause. I mean, he is giving his point of view from someone that is being attacked, somebody that's on the ground that has decided not to flee and do what he can. His family has been sent away or has gone away for safety, but he's still there. And I want to kind of start off with the best stuff right here. I want to bring this, and I encourage everybody to go to your Facebook page, because if they do, Sergey, this is what they're going to find. This is the opening header for your Facebook page. Now, this is just from this past Wednesday. I want you to talk about these fundraisers that you're fronting. It says we're raising $1,420 for 4 UFO heaters. You can explain what that is. 2 mattresses with heating to maintain a constant temperature of newborns during nursing, and 15 warm blankets for the Chevsky District Intensive Care Hospital in the Sami Central District Hospital. So tell us what you're doing here.
Well, that started probably in March. My friends, they are running fundraising organization that's called Superheroes. And when we had no access to our studio yet, back in that March and April, we've been in my apartment with Vlad Butenko, my colleague, and we started to do some live streams. Well, actually, we talked about what's going on here in Ukraine, and we started to just play some music, and we came with an idea that we can raise some money with it by playing some music for people. And we tried to play probably 5 or 6 songs. People liked it, and they started to donate. So we decided why not to do it every week. So since end of the March, we doing live shows each week on Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m. Ukrainian time. And we're raising some money for some causes. Mostly we raising money for maternity hospitals, because that fundraising organization works mostly with newborn children. And we're trying to supply them with things they need, some medical equipment, some, for example, these mattresses, it's mattresses that you can plug into some electricity and keep the constant temperature. We need it because during the air alerts, they have to go down to the shelters with children newly born. And of course, there's no special equipment to keep the temperature for them and no heaters. So we're trying to help the hospitals with equipment they need.
My God, this guy is a hero. And look at the difference between somebody like Sergey, a musician, doing what he's doing, and then counterbalance that with these warmongering people in Russia blowing his country up, blowing playgrounds up. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But also, sir, he's great, and like a lot of musicians, now he's raising funds, but he's also giving you something. If you go to his Facebook pages and go to YouTube and that type of thing, there's some great music, and I want to just bring this up on screen and show that from show a little bit of this from the past week. And I got to say, going into this, I love this because I'm a sucker for I don't know what they call echo guitar or whatever. This is great. This is just the beginning of the most recent performance, I think, from this past Wednesday. Let's watch this for just a minute or so. We'll come right back.
Okay.
Anyone who ever held you would tell you the way I'm feeling. Anyone who ever hunted you would try to tell you what I'm feeling inside. The only thing I ever wanted was the feeling that you ain't thinking. The only one you ever thought about. Wait a minute, can't you say that I wanna fall from the stars straight into your arms? I feel you, I hope you comprehend.
God, is that any good? I mean, I just love that. I love that echo guitar, and I don't know when I listen to that, I kind of get a little kind of a Roy Orbison vibe, and that's kudos to you because that is some real singing, folks. I mean, that that kind of music is not easy to sing, and that's just fantastic. I'm also struck by the fact that you're on bass now. I've seen you play guitar. I've seen you play keyboards. How many instruments do you play, Suri?
Well, I play all of them with different level of musicianship, of course. Well, I'm running the studio from 2008, and mostly I work as the sound engineer and music producer. So when you doing job like this, you have to know how to play each instrument, of course, and sometimes it's easier for me to record the part, some simple part on guitar or on a bass or even on drums by myself than to ask some musician to come to the studio. So from 2008, I've had a lot of experience, and of course, I know how to play all the instruments, but of course, not on such level as Vlad Butenko's playing his guitar, or Ihor Seredam, our drummer, is playing on drums, of course. So I prefer bass because, well, I don't know why, but I like that bass gives the ground for other musicians to build their music upon. So
Yeah, well, I love talking music, and I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Todd Snyder. He's in East Nashville, but he's got a song even devoted to that, and he talks about the bass guitar player. He says, everybody's looking at the front man, the singer, and maybe even the lead guitarist. But he says, if you look out in the crowd, he'll say you can see all the women's asses shaking to the bass guitar. He said, so
yeah,
it really like-
that's actually true. The fun story when the bass player didn't show up on the concert, and after guys played the entire gig without bass player, the only one who left in the audience was the bass player, and he said, been sitting and said, well, without me you sound like shit.
Plain and simple. We could talk about music all day. The other thing about this session musicianship, I'm always struck by, maybe you've heard this story before, but the great Al Cooper here in the United States was sitting in on a session with Bob Dylan, and the keyboard player took a break, and they were getting ready to do a recording of Like a Rolling Stone.
Mhm.
And Al Cooper was sitting in the booth, and he says, "Well, yeah, I'll play the keys." And Bob Dylan, "Oh man, you're a guitar player. No, no, I can play the keys." So he jumped in there, and he's kind of like what you're describing. He can play keyboard, but that's not his instrument. Well, it was iconic. It is the version of Like a Rolling Stone that everybody hears today. And one of the reasons is if you listen closely to Like a Rolling Stone, the keyboards come in like a half beat late. And they stay that way through the whole thing. And again, it's because it's Al Cooper on keyboards.
Mhm.
And it was because he just jumped in and sat down when that guy took a break. And it's a part of music history. Al Cooper and Bob Dylan, Like a Rolling Stone. God, we can
Yeah,
talk.
that's cool.
Yeah, that'll work. Now I'm going to get to some news because this is all around you, obviously. But before we get to that, I kind of want you to talk something about the music because the music is emotive. Events can shape music, good and bad. You've been in the middle of a war. I don't know much about creating music in a war. What's that like? Has it been good? Has it been bad? How would you characterize it?
Well, actually, we just released a CD. Well, I can show you the
Yeah,
print.
first days of war,
First
sure.
days of war, yeah. So we started a music recording label with my friends from Jetpack label group John Pashota, and we decided to release some music that we produced in actually during the war. We have 13 songs here, and all of them were recorded and produced since Russian invasion. Our war is going on for 8 years actually because it started back in 2014. It wasn't all over the Ukraine, it was just on the east. But now we have shellings and terrible things all around the country. And of course, uh, probably first 2 or 3 weeks we've been unable to do anything because you don't know what's going on to be next. But after some period of time you get used to it and you understand that you cannot just sit and wait while you will be destroyed with missile or anything. So we started to do something with different musicians, and we understood that that's probably a best way for us to stay in a normal state of mind. And it really helps us to move on and to fight with Russians and not to give up because on the first few months it was impossible to forecast what's going to be next. Now a few days ago there's been probably the biggest shelling, biggest attack of missiles since 4th of February. And of course it was terrible, but we didn't react to it like something not ordinary for us. So okay, they pointed 86 missiles on Ukraine. Well, of course few dozens of people unfortunately being killed, few facilities been destroyed. But anyway, it's not a reason for us to say, okay, we giving up.
Yeah, well, that's a
and,
great
and
segue, which
music,
is a big part of music. Yeah.
yeah, and music helps us to react to all the things that happening there like this, actually.
All right, good. Let me bring this up on screen and we'll just go through the most recent. Now, this is what I've gotten just this morning. Russia to evacuate Kherson residents as Ukraine advances, this article reads. This is from the AP. Russia has promised free accommodation to residents. Okay, and I know Serge's radar is going up whenever Russia promises something to residents of Ukraine's partially occupied Kherson region who want to evacuate to Russia, a sign that Ukrainian military gains along the war's southern front are worrying the Kremlin. The Moscow-installed leader of Kherson, one of 4 regions illegally annexed by Russian President Vladimir Putin last month, asked the Kremlin to organize an evacuation from 4 cities citing incessant shelling by Ukrainian forces. Now, this highlighting, and this next part is mine. I mentioned the earlier part of that story being, questionable, where it says Russia is promising something. I don't like these kinds of these parts of stories where it says reports have surfaced. Doesn't say what the reports are. Doesn't say where they surfaced from. So look at this with a jaundiced eye, folks, that some Ukrainians were forcibly deported to filtration camps with harsh conditions. Sergey, have you heard of anything about filtration camps? That sounds like they're trying to say like a concentration camp or something. And what the hell is
Well,
that?
actually, it's exact like this, like Nazis did in Second World War. So mostly we heard stories from people of Mariupol region when they took people that still left in the city, and they moved them to some camps where they trying to figure out, are they loyal to Russian invaders or not. So those who were loyal, they probably got a permission to travel to Russia or other region that they occupied. Those who not loyal didn't have a permission to walk freely on the streets or like something like this. So that's true. Actually, that's what's happening there, because a lot of people who are not loyal to Russians left there, but for various reasons they cannot move from there. There can be a lot of reasons. And on other hand, they that's what we hear from Kherson region. It's on the south from Kyiv. They not letting people go out to Ukraine because they started mobilization in Russia, and obviously it includes occupied regions like Crimea or Kherson, and they're trying to force men to enter Russian army and to fight against us. That's why they are not letting those people from southern regions, because they want them to fight in the army, unfortunately.
Well, I'm going to continue with this story, and as you can see, he's kind of like Edward R. Murrow. I mean, he stayed behind. He's on the rooftop, so to speak, reporting from Kyiv, and he's a musician. It's Serge Tignorando. I don't know how correct I am with the last pronunciation, but I hope I've got
Yeah,
the first one right.
yeah,
Anyway.
you got it right, actually.
Because I struggle with names all the time. But I want to ask you about the southern part that was annexed by Russia. A lot of people back here are saying, well, those are Russian-friendly folks. Those people just voted and overwhelmingly voted to be a part of Russia. But I've seen some photos and videos of those people voting with a guy standing there with a rifle when they go to the ballot box, which makes me think that those elections may not be as good as what people think. How do you view those elections? And I guess is it the Donbass where those elections were held?
Well, everywhere in Donbass, in Kherson region, in 2014 in Crimea. Well, all the elections and votings in Russia and related to Russia, obviously it's a fake. You know, they have a President Putin who runs the country for 22 years. Well, what election you can talk about in this situation? Well, I must say that yes, their propaganda reached to some southern region and some eastern region of Ukraine, and yes, there were people that probably been loyal to Russia, and they believe that they will live better if they will flee to Russia or if Russia will come. But that's not a big amount of people, and after the invasion, the full-scale invasion has started, this amount was smaller and smaller, because everybody can see what Russian military is doing, all the crimes, all the terrible things. So I don't think there's a big amount of people still want to be a part of Russian Federation. But anyway, they have militaries there, a lot of people, and of course, some people just scared to do something. But as you could see in Kherson, even when it was occupied by Russian militaries, there were still a lot of people going out on the street and protest against the invasion.
And I want to underline or emphasize what Serge said there. He talked about war crimes. This war in Ukraine, the way that it was started, the way that Russia did this, by all measures, it's illegal. It's a war crime. I don't know how war could ever not be a crime, but
Yeah, correct.
this definitely is. All right, let me bring this up on screen here. To finish this out, in addition, an Associated Press investigation found that Russian officials deported thousands of Ukrainian children, some orphaned, others living with foster families or in institutions, to be raised as Russian. God, I mean, we're talking Mengele stuff here, folks. Putin illegally annexed Kherson, which is what we're talking about, as well as the neighboring region and the Donetsk and Luhansk regions of eastern Ukraine last month following referendums. That's the elections that we were talking about. The four regions that Kyiv and the West denounced as a sham. And that's what Sergei called fake. For a fifth day, Russia continued missile strikes on critical infrastructure that started Monday in retaliation for explosions on the Kerch Bridge last weekend that Moscow has said was caused by a truck bomb. The span, which links Crimea to the Russian mainland, holds important strategic and symbolic value to Russia in its faltering war with Ukraine. Again, I highlighted this because I'm like, I don't know, wars are up and down, they falter, advances are made, losses are taken. I don't know if this war is necessarily faltering, but that's what this says. In the last 24 hours, now this is just this morning, so this is really recent. In the last 24 hours, at least 9 civilians were killed, 15 wounded, the Ukrainian president's office reported this morning. The victims included an 11-year-old boy and 6 other people who died after a missile strike in the city of, where is this, Sergei?
Mykolaiv.
Yeah.
It's near to Kherson. It was not occupied by Russians, and it's very important city for them, because their plan was go through Mykolaiv and connect their forces with Transnistria forces near Moldova. Yeah.
Multiple Russian missile strikes shook the city of, pronounce that one for me.
Zaporizhia.
Okay. Overnight, the capital of the annexed region remains in Ukraine hands and has come under repeated bombardment in Ukraine, pushing its southern counteroffensive. Several explosions were reported overnight at infrastructure facilities, causing fires. The regional governor said there were no victims in preliminary reports, and further details about specific damages were unavailable as of this reporting. This is something I wanted you to talk about. I, just like all Americans, we were unaware of this. Today is Defenders Day in Ukraine, but celebrations were muted because of the war in Kyiv, where Sergei is. A concert at the Central Opera House was canceled because of planned rotating power outages across the city as repairs to the city's energy infrastructure continue following Russia's wide-ranging missile attack. So talk about Defenders Day. How would you describe that to people here, knowing what our holidays are?
Well, I think you have such day. Let me remember. Well, it's like your Veterans Day. I don't know.
Okay.
Well, actually, we just celebrating by congratulating our militaries who are defending us. It's not a very big celebration, but sometimes we have some concerts or shows. Well, right now, of course, we have no big celebrations at all. So
No.
that's not just because of power outages. That's probably because of war is going on. So it's not a time to celebrate.
Well, and I'm going to bring this up on screen here. I've got this drone video, and we're going to talk. I think I've got some text here about drones, but I want people to take a look at this. You talked about outdoor celebrations, and I think you'll be able to talk over this video, Sergey. But this is the arch again, very important in Kiev, and I see an amphitheater in this video. I'm bringing this up. Have you performed there? Here it goes.
Yes, once I performed there with one of the bands I've played in. So its arc is from the Soviet Union times, and there were a monument right below it. If you will see my Facebook page, you probably will see some footages and photos when this monument was removed. So that was a monument to the friendship of nations, and obviously during Soviet time that was a friendship of only Soviet nations, and it was pretty not comfortable for people of Ukraine, and it didn't look good. I mean, like creation of art, because during the Soviet Union occupation they had a art of they called it social realism. So mostly they just supported some amateur painters or sculptors or any people of art to do something to show that everyone can do some some paintings or some sculptures. So it was not very good pieces of art, and we do not like anything that was made during that period, including these monuments.
Yeah.
But the bridge that leads to that arch is you can see it. It's pretty nice structure, and it was hit by Russian missile too on Monday, but not like bridge to Crimea. It's not damaged actually.
Okay, so that it's still functional.
Yeah. You
There
can
it
walk
is.
there. Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, you
I,
know,
I I don't know what they wanted to do by hitting this
yeah.
bridge, because it's just like sightseeing for tourists. But who knows the Russian? But a little bit further, so you can see the building down the stairs. There's a Philharmonic Hall where well, actually, there's a Philharmonic Orchestra is performing and rehearsing, and this building was damaged a little bit. At least I know that the windows were destroyed there.
You know what I think of when I see that video, and like you say, the arc, and so much for friendship. I guess you're going to wage war on a population, on a civilian population that's being killed. And my God, but I've mentioned this before, and it must really make you sad. Ukraine is such a beautiful country, and I'm here in the heartland in the United States, and I kind of liken it to what we have here. I mean, it is just a beautiful place with beautiful cities, beautiful history, and then think about blowing all that shit up. I mean, just sending missiles in and destroying it, some of it forever. I mean, some things can be rebuilt, but lives cannot. And that's what's happening. That's what war is, folks. And it is hideously ugly. And what a shame. What a catastrophe this is.
Yes, it is. You're right.
Yeah. Let me see what this last paragraph has in it here. I want to bring this up on screen here. All right. So, missile, drone, and rocket attacks on Ukraine have kept the country on edge, with air raid sirens occurring more frequently and bringing a heightened sense of urgency after Monday's strike killed 19 people. This was Monday, and wounded more than 100, including many in the capital. Well, the thing I wanted you to talk about here are drones. Now, I've talked about them on my show a lot. And what I tell people is these things are particularly hideous. And my feeling is they're coming to a neighborhood near you. They're in Ukraine now. They've been used around the world. These drones can be launched from virtually anywhere. They can be launched out of a pickup truck or a suitcase, basically. And they are merchants of death, death from above. Have you seen any drones? Are they flying over Kiev?
Yeah, they flying over Kyiv, but I didn't see any drones yet. But they Russians bought all these drones in Iran, and it's pretty simple stuff. And the engine is very loud in all these drones,
Uh,
and our military is calling them flying bikes. So you cannot see these drones, but you can hear it like from 50 miles when it's flying to you. So it doesn't make a lot of harm to militaries, actually, because you can hear it, you can destroy it with fighting jets or missiles, but it's pretty terrible for when they attacking civilian objects, because when these drones are flying over the speedway, you cannot recognize it's just like a car
uh,
driving there. So and they attacked a lot of objects with these drones, unfortunately. And well, we had no modern air defense system in Ukraine. It was back from Soviet Union. It was old equipment. But now, after the attack this week, a lot of countries, including US, helping us with supplying us with modern air defense systems, which will help us to be not completely safe, but at least we will be able to destroy these missiles and drones more effectively.
yeah. Okay, great. Let's see what we've got here now to come up. This is something that we've talked about before. It's a concern around the world. It gets a lot of media coverage. There are those people that think maybe the nuclear threat is a little overblown. I want you to talk about that. But this is the chief of NATO warning that Russia is not to cross a very important line. And my God, the doomsday clock's at 90 seconds to midnight. I'm scared to death of nuclear weapons. I kind of, this normalizing verbiage that we're using with these nuclear weapons, I wouldn't even, a line? Okay. Russian President Vladimir Putin would be crossing a very important line if we were to order if he were to order the use of nuclear weapons in Ukraine. NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg warned Thursday, as both the military alliance and Russia are due to hold nuclear exercises in the next few days. Now, this struck me as really weird too, Serge, because here we are. Biden has warned of nuclear Armageddon. Putin has rattled the saber about tactical nuclear weapons. And here Ukraine is on the world stage. And what are these guys doing? They're having nuclear war games. I mean, NATO is holding its exercise dubbed Steadfast Noon next week. The long planned maneuvers. I mean, they plan these, they have these things, but to me, what the hell? Couldn't you call these off right now? Are conducted around the same time every year and run for about 1 week. They involve fighter jets capable of carrying nuclear warheads, but do not invoke any live bombs. Okay, I want to say right here that a lot of people are not aware. You can Google this. You can go on Wikipedia or any place. There have been live bombs dropped in the United States accidentally that were not supposed to be on board a plane. They screwed up and put nuclear bombs. Fortunately, they didn't detonate on a plane. Either the plane crashed or they dropped them accidentally. And this is my big worry. This is what I talk about in the 2020 world that we live in. We can be dead in 20 minutes from an accidental nuclear strike. And that probably is my greatest fear as we screw around with nuclear weapons. Russia usually holds its own maneuvers around the same time, and NATO is expecting Moscow's exercise of its nuclear forces sometime this month, the AP reports. Stoltenberg said NATO will closely monitor what Russia is up to. Asked what NATO would do if Russia launched a nuclear attack, Stoltenberg said, "We will not go into exactly how we will respond, but of course, this will fundamentally change the nature of the conflict. It will mean that a very important line has been crossed." Now, NATO as an organization doesn't possess any weapons. That struck me as interesting. The nuclear weapons nominally linked to the alliance remain under the firm control of 3 member countries, the US, the UK, and France. But France insists on maintaining its nuclear independence and doesn't take part in the nuclear planning group meetings. Okay, so that's kind of my alarm bell for this nuclear stuff, Serge. And I remember you being on my show before, and you said, you weren't really that worried about Putin firing nukes into Ukraine because it literally will blow back on him because of the prevailing winds. I mean, he would be sending a nuclear winter into his own country. But he's warned about these tactical nuclear weapons. What's your feeling right now about nukes and the potential use of them?
Well, I have a radiation meter already, so probably that will answer your question.
Yeah.
Well, we are ready for that, of course. The situation is uncertain, but the threat is real, and probably many people saying that the last attack, missiles on this week, was probably the one of the last efforts to terrorize people of Ukraine to give up, to stop fighting against Russia, but it didn't work, it's obvious. And well, I don't know what they've been expecting after this attack, but obviously they didn't reach their goals, and probably the next step is nuclear weapon, but it's not so easy thing to do, to hit a country with a nuclear weapon, and of course they will have an answer, but as we can see right now, we have no targets that they could hit with nuclear weapon, and it can change the how war is going on. So on one hand, we understand that they can do it, and on other hand, we can see that there is no reason to use the nuclear weapon because, well, if they will hit one city, they will have more problems with NATO, with United States, with the UK, and they will not achieve any goals in Ukraine because you cannot destroy the entire country and occupy it, right? There's no sense in it. So we are ready for that, but let's hope that won't happen. That's all I can say. I cannot hear you.
I just muted that. Okay, so here we are. An excellent point there. Who would want to occupy a nuked country? I mean, that's an excellent point to make. The other point that I've heard military experts make is that with these huge conventional weapons they have and the ability to target them and strike, the tactical nuclear weapon idea may be a little bit outmoded. I mean, if you want to destroy a city, you don't need a tactical nuclear weapon to do that. If you want to destroy the Earth, I mean, one of these ICBMs could probably do that if it would come to that. And again, with this accidental nature, but just think about a tactical nuclear weapon being used. It hits, the immediate response is, what the hell was that? And while they're trying to sort it out, how do you respond? Do you respond like it was a limited tactical one-off nuclear weapon? Or do you respond like it's all-out nuclear war? And if you do, what happens to Ukraine? What happens to the world? What happens to the rest of us? So, I mean, that is scary stuff. And I hate the normalization, that even the reporting or discussion of these types of things like they're everyday occurrences or events. It's insanity, really, is the way that
Yes,
any talk of that
it,
to me.
it is. So I hope that won't happen.
Yeah, my God, yeah. So let's look at this now. This will be we're running out of time here, and I want to encourage anybody that wants to talk to Sergei Tagnarundo in Ukraine and Kyiv this evening, his time, this morning here in the Heartland. Please do so. Just post a question. We've had a lot of comments. He's got a lot of fans, folks. Now, this is from Common Dreams. I follow Common Dreams pretty closely. It says a UN chief decries unacceptable escalation of the war in Ukraine. A spokesperson said United Nations Secretary Antonio Guterres is deeply shocked by today's, now this would have been Monday's, large-scale missile attacks by the armed forces of the Ukraine Federation. The head of the United Nations Monday condemned the unacceptable escalation of the war after Russia bombed Kyiv and other major cities. A far-reaching attack that Russian President Vladimir Putin said was launched in retaliation for a deadly blast that damaged a bridge to Crimea over the weekend. The Secretary General is deeply shocked by today's large-scale missile attacks by the armed forces of the Russian Federation on cities across Ukraine that reportedly resulted in widespread damage. Well, it did, to civilian areas and led to dozens of people being killed and injured. As always, the spokesperson added, the civilians are paying the highest price. Though some missiles apparently targeted energy facilities, others struck civilian areas during the morning rush hour. One hit a playground in downtown Kyiv. There's been a lot of reporting on that. Another struck a central building of a local university. Witnesses said one missile landed in front of a bus. Okay, let me take that off screen, because here's the point that I want to make about civilians. Those civilians that were killed, now in the context of total all-out war, it may not be a lot of casualties, but if it was your life, you only have but one life to give, folks. That person's life is forever ended. They attempted to eliminate or wipe out infrastructure, including the power grid. They sent those missiles into Kyiv. Look at Serge right now. He's using that power grid. He's coming to us live over the internet. That goal that Russia had was not achieved. They failed. But those people, those civilians, they're dead, folks, and they ain't coming back, Serge.
Yes, yes. Well, talking about Crimean breach,
Yeah.
that's also for me, when I saw the first videos, it was obvious that something wrong with it. So if you saw the footages and photos from there, Russians claiming that the explosion was from the truck that was driving over the bridge. But
Truck bomb, yeah.
if you will look at the photos, you will see that the bridge is pretty much damaged, and two aisles of bridge are in the water, actually. And well, I can't imagine how much of explosive materials should be in the truck to do such damage to the bridge, because probably you saw the bridge in Kherson, which our military has destroyed with missiles. They pointed like 20 missiles there, and it's still standing. There's just few holes in there. And if you will look at the photos of the Crimean Bridge, you can see that there is no damage on the surface of the road. So there is no way that something exploded above the bridge and didn't give any damage to the road coverage. So probably the explosion was below the bridge, and obviously that's right now. We believe in Ukrainian military forces, but for our militaries now it's impossible because the bridge is has a lot of levels of security, and there is no way that our missile or any boat could reach the bridge and destroy it like this. So we think that probably that's something inside of Russia happening that made this explosion.
Explain the significance of the bridge. There was some reporting on it here in this country about the strategic significance of the bridge, but I also heard that there's kind of an ego thing
Oh,
with Russia and Putin with that bridge. What's that all about?
well, in 2014, when they captured the Crimea Peninsula, uh, there was no roads to there from that could connect peninsula to Russia. So that's a Ukrainian territory, and all around there is Ukrainian territory. So the only way is to get to the Crimea for them was to use ferry, and well, of course, boats and planes, but they had no connection to land of Russia. So they started to build this bridge, and it was very, very expensive project because, well, it's very, very long and very expensive. And of course, a big amount of supplies, military technique, and troops are going to territory of Ukraine through Crimea and from the Crimea side. So that was very important from the strategic point of view for Russian militaries, and of course for Putin, who actually started this project by annexing Crimea and bringing it to Russia. Well, I don't think that that affected the supplies of Russian army that much that Ukrainian militaries should bring all efforts to destroy the bridge right now, because we have a lot of more problems. We have like more than 1,000 miles of the front with Russian militaries, and there's much bigger problems there. You know, our military is fighting back cities step by step, and that's where they are concentrated right now.
Okay, we're running out of time. This may be the most important point to discuss. There are calls here from the left. I'm a part of the peace movement, the left side of for negotiated settlement, for there to be some kind of a ceasefire and some talks. And some people on the left are saying one of the biggest reasons for doing this, though Ukraine is fighting valiantly and doing what it can, they'll say Ukraine can't defeat Russia. I look at it and go, well, wait a minute. I remember Afghanistan as an example. Russia had to pick up and go home. I mean, the Afghans, if you want to look at it that way, did win that war, but at what cost? It took a long time. If Ukraine expects to win this war, even with NATO assistance and that type of thing, it could take a very long time. It could account for an extreme loss of life. The country could be rubbleized, basically. And so there's two sides to that coin. Can they win? Yeah, if you look at it in that context, but at what cost, Serge?
Well, you know, the cost is high, but we have no way to give up because, well, they will just capture Ukraine. They will just destroy all the people who are not agree with them, and they will not stop on this. They will go forward. And if we will look at the nearest history of Russians' war, back in 90s, they had war in Chechnya, which was Ichkeria, and they lost. So they in 1994 they started the war in Chechnya, and they couldn't capture it. So they gave up. They bought peace between these in this region, and probably 10 years later they did it once again and they occupied it. But Ukraine is much bigger, and we have no options like we will give up. So of course negotiations is the only way to stop the war, but we have no signs of desire from the Russian side, because negotiations started in the first days of war actually, and they tried to negotiate, but that was just a fake negotiations like the elections in Russia.
All right, let me bring this up on screen because this is what we're talking about here. This is a great photo. This is now, this was after Monday and those missile attacks. It's a civilian, a woman there, and a firefighter trying to injure her. So trying to help her. Now, the thing I want to close with here from my perspective, I want to give you the last word, obviously. But this is a good example. And people here have no understanding of what this is like. You've been there for the duration. War is the greatest evil. I'm going to have the great Chris Hedges on my show here in a week or two to discuss his book. It's a horrible thing to witness, and it damages people in a lot of ways. It can kill them, and it can harm them mentally as well. Tell us about just the morale, the psyche of your friends and neighbors, the people that have stayed behind, the people that are living with war on a daily basis, that have these missiles landing in playgrounds in the city center, as an example. How is this affecting your friends and neighbors? I guess the question is, what's the morale like now?
Well, that's different. That depends on the person. Most of the people of my age and younger, they are in a pretty normal state. So I don't see any cases of mental injurement in them. But of course, older people, they harm much more, and probably children. I don't know. My children are in Poland right now, but I think that, well, actually, one of our friends, a voice talent, she has a kid, and now they are in a hospital because he has some problems with health, but doctors cannot figure out what's going on. So probably that's some psychological trauma, and how the system of kid reacts to that. So unfortunately, children and older people are much more injured with these attacks, because, well, it's not easy, and I understand that psychologically it's probably, we will have a lot of injured people in this case.
Oh, yeah, mentally and physically. Well, let me bring this back up on screen here very quickly. Now, this is Mary Knox, Serge. She's a friend of Podcast by George, and she knows how to cut to the chase. I mean, this is great. This is what I'm talking about here. She says, it's really interesting to hear these comments from you, Serge. Your words give us a lot of perspective that we cannot get normally. That talks about our news coverage back here to a certain extent, but also even Podcast by George. I mean, I think, I feel, I believe Serge knows. He's there. I mean, you got to have this firsthand perspective, and that's what he brings us. And these missiles are coming into Kyiv. They were this week anyway. So I'm going to give you the closer here. I want to give you the last comment, the last word here, because as Mary Knox says, this is all about you. You tell us how you want to close this, Serge. What words do you want to share with us here at the end?
Well, usually I say all the same thing, that we will fight, we will not give up, and Russia must be stopped. The things how they trying to um, act with the humanity is dangerous, and there is no way that there will be a peace on earth until the regime in Russia will stay the same. So we will fight. We will not give up, and Ukraine will win. So believe in Ukraine. Believe in Ukrainian military forces. Slava Ukraini and Heroyam Slava.
Oh, that's great. And I can only, this guy's a hero, folks. He is to me. I mean, everything
Um,
about this guy. I mean, he's reporting. He's a journalist, really, is what he's doing. His wife does work in journalism, and he's a musician. My God, I just love the talent and skill, the ability that this man has. I really love having him on the show. I don't like to use up too much of his time. We'll circle back. We'll get with him again very, very soon. But Sergey Tagnorendo, thanks very much for coming on this podcast by George Liveline once again. Stay safe. Stay well.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
All right, folks. And if you like seeing Sergey on Podcast by George on the Liveline, please do what I always encourage people to do at the end of my shows. If you're watching on Facebook, follow us. Give me a thumbs up. Give us a like there. If you're looking at it on YouTube, subscribe, ring the notification bell, leave a comment. And of course, you can get all of the platforms. You can choose where you want to hear or where you want to see the shows on podcastbygeorge.com. But that is going to do it. That's going to wrap it up. That's all there is. And there ain't no more. That's another podcast by George.